Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Tim Fryer with a tip. Loose ball. Who's got it? Jackson does. He'll get it to Fryer, quickly to Tennyson. Deep three ball. It's good again. Trey Tennyson misses the mark. That's okay. Branson's going to throw the heave. This one's over, and the Islanders are heading to Birmingham.
Hinson way downtown. He got it. Cummings, his three is good.
Woo. I'm so proud of these guys, man. They fight. It's who they've been all year. Guys step up and make big plays. They're not afraid. We got a little bit lucky with that. We thought it was going to Smith. We really wanted to try to crowd that, and we didn't do a good job there. But, man, Jamari is to sit for most of the game, and he loves those moments. It reminds me of last year in the Garden against St. John's. And guys just stepped up. Blake hits a what the hell three. You know, we're like, what are you doing? And he's done that all year. So I'm really, really proud of him.
Get up. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Hopefully you're up and joining us right away here on the show. Happy to have you with us alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Probably the most beautiful day we are going to see until spring today. It's supposed to be up in the 60s, so get out and enjoy that weather if you can. March Madness has officially been put into action last night. First four games. We had some buzz on social media we'll get into on the show today. More in free agency and whatever the heck Aaron Rodgers is doing. And as long as he keeps toying with the league, I guess Aaron Rodgers runs the league.
Aaron Rodgers, I mean, we make fun of Kyrie Irving and some guys like that with big personalities. Holy smokes.
He's a diva. He is
Aaron Rodgers is out
diva.
there.
Oh.
Hey, here's some folks I want you to take a look at.
Okay.
Yeah, weird. Jets are
Okay.
pursuing a couple of these guys.
I guess I'll look
agency.
at everybody on the Packers offense,
man,
and think, yeah, we could do.
Don't forget OBJ.
Oh yeah. Don't leave him out.
Yeah, let's take a look at him too.
I didn't know you could give a wish list to a team and say, hey, get all these guys, and then I'll come, because here's what I'm thinking.
Is this including the $60 million price tag?
Yeah, I didn't see that as a part of the wish list.
Go fudge, man. He's already getting that.
So what if he tells the Jets to take Alan Lazard, to take Mercedes Lewis, to take OBJ, and they do it, and then he's like, yeah, I'm not coming.
Yeah, I'm good. Well, he can't go back to Green Bay.
Can he, though? I mean, I feel like he can do whatever he wants. He is the.
I put it to you like this: he wouldn't be well received.
No,
back in Green Bay.
Oh gosh, no.
Can you imagine him walking back in that locker room? Yeah, no.
The fans would be okay with it.
I don't know. If I'm a fan in Green Bay, I'm like, good riddance.
I don't know. I think
he wore out his welcome like 2 years ago.
Maybe more, but guess what happened 2 years ago?
Yeah, I get it, the MVP, but
back-to-back MVPs.
I don't think they're vibing with him at all. So once upon a time, I used to wonder. I was like, maybe it's a Favre town. And I was like, he's maybe not that good of a guy. Then the last year, I'm like, oh, for sure, like people will get off of Favre. Maybe it's an Aaron Rodgers organization. Now I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they go back to Bart Starr.
Aaron Rodgers needs more attention than how do I put this nicely? I'll use my dog for example. He needs more attention than a new puppy.
Little needy. Yeah, that's wild. And like, where does Rossini get the information? Like, somebody has to tell her that. Is it the Jets organization? Is it Aaron's folks? Because why would the Jets make that public?
It's got to be Aaron.
Because they look like a pawn. I mean, I wouldn't, but hey.
At what point do you say, if you're the Jets, like, I don't want to deal with this anymore? Like, at what point do you say that? You could go after Lamar Jackson right now.
I just, and why would the organization come across as not having the autonomy to do how they see fit? Although I do remember a former coach telling a potential coach that they were interviewing that they had to wait on another former coach to sign off on it before they hired him. And I was like, whose team is it? And do you want to win? If you want to win, hire that guy. If you want to haul around, wait on somebody else's yes that's not even coaching. You go ahead, let me know that works out for you. And sure enough, it didn't work out for him, but it's a whole nother story. Anyway, if you're running the organization and that's your team, you run it.
Well, Aaron Rodgers is practically runing every organization.
I mean, you're going to commit financially that for what? Another 2
years.
You don't even know how long he's going to play.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to guess
Chaos?
3 years, right?
Yeah, chaos.
You're going to guess. This goes back to what we talked about yesterday, though, with quarterback competition.
Yeah.
And having one guy in the room and only one guy that gets the sole focus because he needs a little bit of a babysitter.
It's our fault.
Aaron Rodgers is the example of that.
It's our fault, man. We do it. We do it. My man Nebraska, what he tell us one time, Shane? He said, we do it to ourselves. He was talking about Nebraska, the organization.
You're dang right.
That's Nebraska. He's great. So I don't know, man. I guess we can ask Andy. I feel like I ask him once a year about Aaron Rodgers, as a former Wisconsin guy, and he covers the Pac. I wonder if his opinion has gone back and forth. That organization can't
has it ever gone forth, or has it only gone back? Like, Aaron Rodgers only brought that franchise one Super Bowl.
Oh, I know.
And even though he's an MVP, right?
Do you know who they beat?
Why'd you eye roll?
Fudge. Throwing pick sixes and stuff, Ben.
Why in the world are you all in on Aaron Rodgers, though, really ever, with what he's been able to do?
He is a supreme talent.
He's a winner, right?
Like,
but how far does a winner take you versus how far?
I don't know. Is he a winner?
He gets to the playoffs a lot.
Yeah.
So if I say he's a winner in that regard, but where's your ceiling? Like, what is Aaron Rodgers' ceiling now? Is it, individual accolades?
He's past his peak. Can he take a franchise with him? I don't know. Maybe. The hard part about Aaron Rodgers is like, if I'm putting together a lab, if I'm in a lab and I'm putting together a quarterback, I'm probably taking like 90% of Aaron Rodgers' ingredients.
Talent-wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not upstairs, because you mentioned right at the beginning how if he goes back to Green Bay, he's lost the locker room. If he ends up in New York, how does he get the locker room? How does his personality mesh in New York?
I think they want to win, and he is competitive, right? Like, he's extremely competitive. Here's the thing with those guys, though. If they find somebody that they can believe in, at the end of the day, they want to win games. So they could potentially come around. And remember, he hasn't done anything to the Jets. He hasn't put them in kind of harm's way, or potentially, not like he's been disrespectful with the Packers organization, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure they have to feel like he's jerked them around for quite some time. So he gets a fresh start in New York. I mean, look at Sauter, the biggest Jets fan I know. He hates Aaron Rodgers, but if it means winning games, he's all in. He's sending me, photo edits. So, like, I think that's how Jets fans would be. I mean, listen, they've taken on some strange quarterbacks. They have Vinny Testaverde and Brett
Taking
Favre,
on a lot of quarterbacks.
Zach Wilson. I mean, these guys, it's been a revolving door. I mean, Ken O'Brien and Todd were a long time ago. I mean, what happens once Geno Smith leaves? Geno Smith got paid. And by the way, he's a fantastic interview. I was listening to him on the NFL Network the other day, and he's a silly cat. He's like, yeah, man, my arm feels good. I'm back in the offseason. My six-pack's back. I'm ready to roll. Let's get this money. I said, okay, Geno.
So do you guys?
Okay, Geno.
Do you guys want your NFL team to be led by the quarterback or by the head coach? Because if he goes to the Jets, I mean that's essentially what he wants to lead the team. He can't do it in Green Bay.
You got to be led by a coach.
I don't know. Are we myopic in thinking that though?
That you have to be led by a coach?
Yeah.
Who
led Pittsburgh? Was it Ben or was it Mike?
Well, it was definitely Bill and then Mike. Roethlisberger's personality was pretty strong, though. I think ideally you want your quarterback to be an extension of your head coach, like a Breeze,
absolutely,
like a Breeze Payton.
But ultimately, you want your coach has the final say.
Mm-hmm.
Not an Aaron Rodgers world, but you want your coach to have.
Shanahan had control over Elway down the stretch. Probably.
Mm-hmm.
They ran the ball. They ran the ball a ton. I'm just looking at. I mean, it was definitely Montana was an extension of Walsh. I mean, Dallas is kind of an anomaly because that was not really Barry's team. That was the players' team with Troy. The 1 year Barry won it, but it was Jimmy's personality. I don't know. I mean, I think ideally you want your quarterback to be an extension of your coach. I think.
Absolutely. I mean, your quarterback is second fiddle to the head coach for a reason. I mean, you look at Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady could do Tom Brady things, but how do you get there? You got to have good leadership above Tom Brady to get there.
Yeah, so Jeremy was listening to our discussion yesterday on podcasts because we were talking about quarterbacks and should you only recruit one, and why do we have different sets of criteria for quarterbacks? And it was hopefully you go back and listen to that segment because there was a lot in there, right? And it was on the heels
of a lot to unravel.
It was on the heels of Danny and Dylan Raiola and Nebraska recruiting quarterbacks, and we went down the line of I watched the game last night, went down the rabbit hole. I watched 95 Nebraska and Kansas. And we played against Ben Roots, got some snaps in that game. And Ben Roots was one of the guys that I was telling you about that came from Oklahoma the same year that Tommy did, when it was 2 top 10 quarterbacks in the country in the same recruiting class. And, Mike Grant was there, and we recruited T. Fraze, and Mike Grant, before he got hurt, was you used to recruit multiple quarterbacks, mm-hmm. right? And we've seen it both ways, right? Remember when we thought Harbaugh was going to be in trouble at Michigan because he wasn't developing his own quarterbacks? He was getting them out of the portal.
Yep.
So, I mean, Fields, and you look at Georgia's quarterback roster before Fields left. You look at Ohio State's quarterback roster before Burrow left. Did those guys have any rules? Were they like, we're only going to do X, Y, and Z. Let's not. I mean, I think they did what they could do, and they'd sorted itself out. And I think those are the guys that you want, right? I mean, SC's made no bones about they've got a 5-star in the fray, and they're still going to put the full court press on Dylan Raiola. And he's going back there, I think, April 8th,
mm-hmm.
Which is after Lincoln, which I don't love, but right. I mean, it is what it is. He's in California enough, so I'm not too put off by that. But I want you to take a look at something, because Jeremy sounds a little bit like you yesterday, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm listening. Let's see what happens. And he says, DB, listening to the show this morning going back and listening to the show on the podcast this morning, the quarterback talk was interesting. He says, I think I'm okay with losing out on quarterbacks when our room is stacked and we're heavy on the trail of the number one quarterback in the country. Same as the running back and wide receivers to me. If we're stacked, we have a great chance of landing some of the top guys in the country. I'm okay if we pass on some in-state guys that could be a development project. Now, I'm not okay with missing out on linemen, linebackers, tight ends, and DBs. I don't know why other than those positions can be moved around until you find the right fit for them. I just take as many of those guys as you can and sort it out later. Quarterbacks and running backs, I think you have to be picky as long as your room looks good. Those two positions are always in the portal. Then he's like, hey, sorry for the no paragraphs when I'm up. But whatever. It's like, I don't know. Like, there's some validity to what he's saying, because I think he's saying what we really think. I just don't know why. Like, why are we cool with the whole? And he added running backs. Are we cool with running backs?
No, I think running backs get more. You want more running backs
and figure it out.
Yeah, and figure it out later. Quarterback's the only position because you really only need one of them, right? At the end of the day, and I'm not saying you don't need backups and things like that, but you just need one guy. Whereas he mentions you don't want to miss out on linemen. Well, yeah, because you need 5 of them.
Well, that's kind of how I feel about running backs.
You get the bigger sample size. And you may say, well, you only need 1 tight end. Well, it depends on what system you run. Some run 2 tight ends. Some utilize tight ends as a fullback sometimes, and having bigger bodies is good not only just for on the line, but special teams and things like that too. Defensive players are the same way. You have multiple positions that you're trying to fill. The quarterback's the one position that you just need one guy. So if you can go all in on one guy, if you can solidify that one, just like he said, if you miss, what's the most available position? Like when you get to the portal, it's really quarterbacks because not every team needs more than one guy.
Yeah. So I think what I was trying to arrive at yesterday when I gave you the 3 criteria, right? Where you want competitiveness, you want good leadership, and I think you have to have a certain amount of clutch, right? Like you have to be able to thrive when
no question
when it's not good. I think as long as I have those 3 ingredients, I'm going to have a chance to win. Now I can say that and know full well I'm the guy that said 6 years ago, I don't care what you do at quarterback in terms of being serviceable. There's 10 throws a game or 10 plays a game a quarterback has to be able to make that's about his ability or something thereof, right? You're going to have to make the throw. And maybe 10 is a little high, but it's certainly more than a handful where you're like, ooh, I'd like to have that one back. You have to make that play. There's about 7 to 10 of those a game where I think are like talent laden. But for the most part, those 3 ingredients will get me by. Because and maybe I'm the one that has the stress disorder, right? But I've just seen way too many talented guys that are chronic bedwetters.
And that was going to be my
I'm not riding with those.
That was going to be my follow-up. Like how often do you see the talent not outweigh, or not that? How often do you see the talent not come with the other ones?
So, I mean, an easy one like Stafford was quite the NFL whipping boy. I've been in 100 arguments over Matt Stafford before he won the Super Bowl. And even when Matt Stafford won the Super Bowl, I heard he still turned the ball over. Right? And I'm just like, there were stretches during the course of his career, whether it was with or without a healthy Calvin Johnson or some of the wide receivers that he was throwing to during stretches of the Super Bowl. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like those guys don't look super sweet. Herbert is a guy that comes to mind. Supremely talented. Why can't he get over the hump? Like, is it too early for me to be?
It's fairly early for him.
I felt the same at Oregon, though, for as talented as he was supposed to be, right? But then there are guys that we poo-poo, like Stetson Bennett, where I was on this show and I was animate. I was like, hey, man, some of those throws that he was making on the run, like his accuracy, like this isn't revisionist history. These are things that I was saying.
It's fact.
Like
you watch what he did at the combine. Like people would say, oh, Will Levis threw 67 miles per hour or whatever, and then act like Stetson Bennett didn't do it too.
And we're like dismissive of it. You know what I mean? Like we'll fall in love with a Ponder or a Locker, but a guy that's won a ton, like we don't think we can
and who
win
elevated his game in college.
No, but and maybe it's different once you get to the NFL because that's the elite of the elite. But nobody's picking out Drew Brees in a lineup to say, man, you know what?
He fits everything we're looking for.
Right?
Oh, really? The short guy over here?
Yeah. Small, undersized, didn't have the big arm. Like, we're not picking that guy. We're not.
But he had this.
Yeah, he apparently has a lot that we can't see, right? So I think it's interesting that because the comment sections after he committed to Missouri, I was like, wow, we're quick to just be dismissive. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying he's he's going to be a program changer or what. My point in that was, why do we pick and choose what hurts our feelings? Is it a quarterback thing?
I think it's the in-state thing. I think it's more, hey, it was pushed off for so long. They got back to it in the recent recruiting class, but then when you start seeing,
so I think people that follow his recruiting, it's not even a saga. His recruiting
journey
never really thought Nebraska was going to be in it anyway. So that's different. I'm just wondering why we get to choose to be dismissive of the quarterback spot. So take him specifically out of the equation. I just wonder why we're quick to. I mean, it's hard to produce because Shane, am I misremembering? Isn't quarterback the one thing that people thought that this state lacked the ability to produce? And now in back-to-back years, we had a couple guys that were getting recruited on the national level. And
was it just missed during that window? Like, did you
miss out? I think high school offenses have changed dramatically. Like they have. They just have. I mean, when I started coach in the early 2000s, we were playing 4-4 cover 3. We would get shredded playing. Not unless we had supreme talent. We would get shredded playing that base defense. But it worked for a while because we saw certain kinds of offense. I mean, if we showed Bellevue West one high and stayed in it 85% of the game, we'd get annihilated. Oh, I mean, we just would, right? So, like, I think the ability to be multiple and do different things, we certainly wouldn't do that against Gretna or somebody like that, right? But I just think it's interesting how we set up the quarterback position to be what it is, and then we complain about it when it is what it is. Oh man, they're just going to transfer a quarterback. I mean, but look how we think of it until they get there their whole life. Oh man, the quarterback. Oh, the quarterback and the quarterback, and he gets treated a certain way, and then we wonder why they act like that. I think at some point we got to either change the parameters or just accept it is what it is.
We'll talk more about the quarterback when we come back because there was a workout that took place in Arizona. And
now he's back to coming again.
Yeah, and Dylan Raiola is holding a boombox that has the N on it. We will talk about that workout, IGC's tweet, and more. Stick around.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, 590 ESPN Omaha. On KFOR in Lincoln at 9 o'clock. We are live on Twitter, live on YouTube, and we are also live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Just finished up our conversations on the quarterback and why they're kind of an isolated being on football teams. Talking they're on their own island for certain reasons. I like one way, DB likes another because of the attributes that come along with the talent, which I completely agree with at the end of the day. But I brought this up during the break with DB, and it had me thinking this, at what point can you attribute poor coaching to this discussion when you're talking quarterbacks and whether it's success rate or not, and talking about the quarterbacks that have come before what Matt Rule and his staff currently have, whether that's Adrian Martinez and company and so forth. At what point does the coach take the blame? Because you want those things of mental toughness upstairs, outside of just the talent of making the big throw. You want that strength, you want that versatility, things like that. But wouldn't that stuff figure itself out if you're winning games? Wouldn't a player kind of reflect on his own game, and because he's feeling good, the team is playing good, the response is good, that stuff would start to figure it out? And so my question then is, at what point can that start falling on the coach to get the team in alignment to win games so that the quarterback doesn't have to be questioned like we are today?
I think there's a lot in there. Because
Adrian Martinez started to win games.
So by nature, I think what we have a tendency to do is when the quarterbacks are playing well, it tends to be more coach-driven, system-driven. Paul Christ with his quarterbacks, kind of plug and play, great play caller. Oh gosh, there's a ton. I was watching this again, just on a humbug, it's on YouTube, 95 Nebraska, Kansas, which by the way, we never played well in Lawrence. That was back-to-back years. We played like horse manure, but they did a little hit piece on T. Fraze, and T. Fraze says, I'm seeing this defense is like I'm designing them now. Like I feel like with the reps we've had, this is the sideline report about what they said T. Fraze had said. And so, Coach Osborne gets his scheme, and the coaching is accredited a lot to that style of play back then. But T. Fraze had so much autonomy to do, like, watch us before we got to the
watch you before you watch.
Yeah, I mean, watched, my man, like, we're waiting. Hey, check with me's. Hey, 43, 47. Like, he's kind of the maestro. But coaches get a lot of the credit. When they're not playing well, you get some Brian Ferentz type stuff where it's like, man, this offensive play calling and the system. So whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent how we associate it, the good usually gets associated with coach and scheme, and the bad is it's a talent thing. Like, we were over Adrian Martinez well before we were over Coach Frost, and they go hand in hand. But we separated the two, right? Conversely, and this is just fans. When Casey Thompson didn't play, man, do we need Casey Thompson? This offense was designed for Casey Thompson. At what point did we like Coach Whipple? Ever? The fan base ever? Like, real talk. Be honest now.
I'd say the fan base was more bought in than
those they really didn't, though. They really never conformed to Whip. But man, when we didn't,
they liked what he accomplished.
But when we didn't have Casey, we needed Casey. It was never
that was the thing,
right?
Mm-hmm. So early on, I would say early on is where I make that case. It's just Whip coming over from Pitt. People were like, "Ooh, okay."
It's just,
I like what he was able to accomplish there.
It's weird what we attribute to whom when whatever hits the fan. And I think if we could somehow just have a perfect, clean break-even point and stop doing that with quarterbacks, like, I think a lot would change. The whole boom or bust, or trading 3 draft picks to go get a guy, because I think the picture wouldn't be as murky in what we want in a quarterback. There's guys, listen, this would be pretty disingenuous for me to sit here and say there's players and there's matchups that whether I'm watching or I'm coaching against, I feel a certain way ahead of time. There's teams that will play where I know full well Hey, when it hits the fan, that dude right there is a bedwetter. He is. If we do this to him, he will crap the bed. I have a good feeling of that. Whereas, oh boy, if this thing is close and that guy's on the field, we're in trouble, right? There's just some matchups that I know I don't like. I'll give you a hoops one. Guess who I never want to see in a big game when it's on the line? I don't want to see Gretna. I don't like the Gretna basketball, Westside basketball matchup.
Is that because of coaching style?
I don't know what it is. It just doesn't work in basketball. It just doesn't. Now, there are some other teams, like if we played, I won't call them out, but if we played some other teams, I was like, yeah, I feel good about that because of in football. I knew if we saw Tarpinian, or these are guys before you, a Fela, there were just some guys that were going to make. I knew Henrich was going to make a play at Burke. If we gave him enough opportunities to keep them in I knew Xavier Watts was going to make a play. Like, ooh, don't keep that guy in it. Like, Flores will eventually get you. Right? I've watched him play with good but not great players for a long time. That guy's going to get you. Conversely, I've watched other guys that can only play with good guys. So, I mean, people know. It's just weird what we want to attribute it to. It's like we act like Josh Allen and Dak Prescott don't have similar statistics. One head coach is a lot more the whipping boy than the other one. Even though McCarthy and Sean Payton have very similar records, eerily similar, but we look at them in vastly different lights. I literally looked at the graphic the other day on ESPN when Jimmy Garoppolo went to the Raiders. What was the title on the 4-letter network? Is this an upgrade? Do you know what Jimmy Garoppolo's record is? 53-21. He wins a heck of a lot more than he loses, right? But he throws an interception every 2.4% of the time.
And he only throws for 200 yards in one score.
Conversely, Derek Carr is 63-79. Throws fewer interceptions percentage-wise, 2.0.
And those teams are overall, they're a lot better than the Raiders teams.
So my thank you, Shane. I could hit that 50 course softball.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about what fits you and who's coaching the quarterbacks and the surrounding pieces more than it is the actual talent. So what part of the onus is on the staff? Right? That's basically what you're saying.
Right at the beginning. Yeah. And you unpackaged a lot there to get there. All great points, though, in becoming validity for that point, for that argument.
So it's like,
I don't know, though. The quarterback is the face of the program now.
Listen, that's our fault.
It is. It's the most.
For 100 years of watching this sport, we've made it that way.
It's the most popular player on every team.
Tell me Georgia, though. Who's the face of the program? Is it Kirby Smart or is it Stetson
Bennett?
Bennett?
Look at Alabama. Look at Michigan.
Nick Saban?
Look at Clemson.
Yeah, exactly. The coach should be the face of the program, which is why the coach gets paid millions of dollars when they are that great.
But there's no kid out there that's 6 years old in Alabama going, I want to be Nick Saban compared to wanting to be the quarterback.
You want to play for Nick Saban, though.
You want to play for Nick Saban, but being that guy.
For laughs and giggles, go look at McCarthy and Sean Payton and Dak Prescott and Josh Allen.
I will during the break.
I'm telling you. But
and it doesn't shock me that their stats are eerily similar either.
Look
because
at QBR.
Dak Prescott is so undervalued.
I'm just saying,
I don't. You know what? I shouldn't say that.
I'm not validating or vindicating either guy. I'm putting the onus on us as people that talk about it every day. Like, I don't know. We need to be better.
It just comes down to winning at the end. But then it goes back to that same question. It's about the coach.
Yeah, but how did we separate Frost from Martinez? We didn't have any problems doing that.
No, we didn't.
It was Adrian's fault.
And it's because Frost was the golden boy. And Adrian Martinez was not. You didn't want to forego the fact that Scott Frost did great for Nebraska. You stayed as long as you could.
Brian, stay right there.
We'll be with you next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Quarterback conversation has led the attack this morning on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. 888-638-4876 if you'd like to get involved at any time. Let's go to the phones on line one. Out of breath, Brian here to talk quarterbacks. Brian, good morning.
What's going on, fellas?
B, what's up, buddy?
Now just enjoying this spring break.
Oh, that's
right.
Kids out of here.
PS
and Bellevue, enjoy.
Yes, for a while. You got to send the kids out. Too many days home. They got to get out of here.
Wait, we're only halfway through the morning of the week, B.
I'm listening to your conversation, and I've been thinking about this question the last couple of days. I know we're always pumping up quarterbacks, and y'all talking about them being overvalued, undervalued. I mean, when you guys talk about the numbers of these quarterbacks, to me, they're within similar range to each other. The best ones are separated by a couple of not that many numbers.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a Patrick Mahomes or Dan Marino to win the quarterback in nowadays NFL or football? Or can you win with the formula of a Bill Belichick with a Phil Simms type quarterback? You know what I'm talking about? The one that meshes. You got an all-around team, defense, more. You want a more balanced team. Can you win with that nowadays? Because I don't really hear people pumping up those type of quarterbacks. We always hear about these 12,000-yard passing quarterbacks pumping them up and giving them accolades instead of one that, like you said, fits with the team.
It's interesting, right?
Go ahead and help them win.
That's a fantastic point, B, because with Brady, we really weren't ready to give him GOAT status until he started stacking championships. It was never about his numbers. Yet, for whatever the reason, when Mahomes was having ridiculous years going for 50 plus in terms of touchdowns and yardage, it was, did he win? Still the GOAT. He's still the best quarterback in the league. But did they win a Super Bowl? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think my whole point in this starting this conversation, it wasn't should we miss Danny Kalen? It was, why are we so quick with quarterbacks to be dismissive or enamored based on what it is we like, right? Like it's just weird how quarterbacks always get their own separate.
Doesn't that kind of like go along with what how fans are nowadays? I like college football, how they want a quick turnaround. Get a new coach, we're going to win next year and go to the championship bowl game.
See,
maybe it's because people want that quick satisfaction.
I'm kind of leaning towards so Andrew said, I don't know if he said this on air or during the break. He basically said, well, when does coaching matter? And I was like, in my head, I'm like, all the time. But
all the time.
But though, I will say this though. I do know there are times where coaches, like, they'll call plays and they'll try to put quarterbacks in good situations, and quarterbacks just don't make plays, right? So it's like, I just wish we were a little. We wish we used a bigger brush when we're painting.
Wouldn't that come down to coaching still? If you call a player that the play a kid they never ran, you might not know what to do. Wouldn't that come down to coaching, like you said, still?
Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate the call, but you know what's funny?
I'll add to that though.
Go ahead.
When to kind of further this off is like it does fall back on the fact that, hey, a player still has to make that play, right? No matter what, if the play goes sideways, does the player have it upstairs, have that IQ to say, ooh, this play broke down. How am I going to get positive yards here?
And ultimately, listen, if you take it back to the Raiola conversation, ultimately this thing may boil down to Marcus Satterfield versus Lincoln Riley
versus Kirby Smart,
right? Like if that's how this thing shakes out in your Raiola and you're looking at that, you can't knock the hustle, right? I mean, all of us would be like that. Okay, I could be with this guy, I could be with this guy, I could be with this guy. Because I remember, and Shane, we may grab him because he stopped at Westside to work with our quarterback. Sage Rosenfels told me something about 4 or 5 years ago. He said, listen, the most important relationship in the NFL is between an offensive coordinator and the quarterback. He said, you could talk about GM, front office, moving numbers. He said the OC quarterback thing is the biggest thing in the NFL with such a quarterback-driven league. So it got my attention, right? So now all of a sudden, even though Daniel Jones only went 15-4 or whatever he was, 15-5, touchdowns to interceptions, who gets all the credit? Dable, right? Is that Daniel Jones' fault that he's finally being coached well and put in positions to be successful? No, because he has a certain baseline of talent. But why does Dable get all the credit? Daniel Jones can't be a guy that's evolving. It's just how we have been trained to look at the quarterback spot, and we need to be better. We do. Like, at some point, if we felt like we had reached the peak with Adrian Martinez, you know what? You got to design an offense that isn't so quarterback centric. If he's not healthy or he's not able to be, you can't say, oh man, if we could only go back to this. No, see, that's on you to adjust. Because you know what we'll love? I'll use Satterfield again. He's got thick skin and he's a good dude. This offense struggled in South Carolina for quite some time. It all of a sudden clicked. I know the stories that he's told me about what took so long in terms of the understanding, the dialogue, the complexity, shuffling in 15 running backs, of ultimately using a tight end at running back. Go back and watch South Carolina film, right? But at the end of the day, he said something that I swear to goodness, if nothing else, and this was on the heels of Matt Rule saying, and listen, I'm going to say this to you guys right now. I believe that we will win at the University of Nebraska. We will win more games than we lose. But I'll tell you this, if we don't, I will be accountable, right? So then he finishes his deal. He sits down. Remember I told you then Coach Satterfield is talking, and he's moving fast, and he's got that draw. He's real he'd be a guy that you think you just want to go shoot the breeze with, right? A good storyteller. So I'm listening, and he says, I told you, right? I said, I don't even know why I put this play on here, because as a coach, it's like Coach Rule says, if you're one of these coaches that stands up here and says what a guy should have done or could have done, and you do it too many times, at some point, you can't what? You can't coach. So it kind of removes the whole, man, if he would have done this, if he should have done that, or we should have done this, because you only get a few of those before it's on you. Like, but that's not how we critique it, though. We look at it and it's like, we just pick sides and we bury and throw dirt, and we lose sight of how connected those two things have to be, because we started the whole thing by saying in some utopia, in a myopic best case scenario, right? You want your quarterback to be an extension of your head coach. You want those two
that was
things
started
to be
weeks, months ago.
You want those two things to be kind of interchangeable. And so if they are, why don't we put more of a premium on that relationship? Right? Like, we don't talk about it that way, though. We don't we don't look at, he's just saving stuff. Like, at some point, the disconnect between McDaniel and Derek Carr had to be addressed, right?
Yes.
At some point, the relationship between quarterback play at Iowa and their OC has to be addressed, right? It's not just Petrus. It's not just Ferentz. It's whatever that relationship.
It comes down to that coach-quarterback relationship and what works and what doesn't.
How did Harbaugh get Rudock to all of a sudden function? I don't know, right? But
Harbaugh.
But who got the credit though? Certainly wasn't Rudock. It was Harbaugh.
Yeah, so if we can give credit where credit is due,
why do we do that though? It's just,
you follow the name, you follow the person. Speaking of following the name,
we need to be better.
So Marcus Satterfield.
We need to be better.
Go ahead, Shane.
Sorry. So if the quarterback is an extension of your head coach, and if the quarterback and the OC should be on the same level, would the OC be an extension of your head coach too?
Well, it's got to be.
It's got to be. Okay.
It
all makes sense.
It's a tree, right? It's a pyramid. Let's not forget, though, that Marcus Satterfield, Coach Spencer Rattler, who came over from Oklahoma, a Lincoln Riley guy that got put on the back burner for Caleb Williams.
Well, he wasn't good.
Yes, I'm with you there. He wasn't good. But
it just me? When we played Oklahoma in Norman, and we were like, oh, man, I don't know about Spencer Rattler. I don't get all the hype. We said that,
there, right? And so
we didn't think he was a good player.
And the hype was there. But when he came to be the beginning of Spencer Rattler's journey.
So when he first got to Oklahoma, when he was throwing to Hazelwood and all those guys in all-star games?
When we were looking at Spencer Rattler, we said, hey, this is a Heisman Trophy candidate. When I say we, I said the general
I'm with you. You don't have to
population,
explain it.
Right?
I get it.
And then it just didn't work, right? But then he goes and plays for Marcus Satterfield. So I don't want it to be like, hey, if it's a guy that Lincoln Riley recruits, which is in this case Dylan Raiola, and it doesn't pan out, and he is 2 or 3 on the depth chart because he's not going to compete right away with Caleb Williams. I guess the next 5-star up in line there over at USC. Yes, Lincoln Riley has that track record, but Marcus Satterfield is also a guy that took in Spencer Rattler and kind of helped mold something to become something at the end.
And you said something that I think is key. Are we really going to act like Lincoln Riley wasn't the head coach that recruited Rattler and Caleb Williams? 2 5-stars on the same time? Are we going to act like that didn't happen? Somehow he did it.
He can pull that stuff off. Brian Christopherson up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Back with you after a solid first hour of quarterback talk with my guy Damon Benning. To my left, I'm Andrew Rogers. I think we came to a close. I think we got there.
Yeah, off air.
When you're winning, it doesn't matter what you do.
No,
until you start winning and until you develop a process, that's how we close.
I just think we got to be better as We got to be better as a fan base. There's that ridiculous cartoon graphic you were making fun of on Super Nintendo.
The animated NHL hockey game.
Because, and I can hear it now. Man, DB, that's Clemson. That's Alabama. That's SC. That's Oklahoma. That's Ohio State. That's Georgia. Those teams can have multiple good players on a roster. Do you know what, though? You have to start somewhere. And
you got to take chances.
Competition. This was my whole thing yesterday. You want as much competition as possible. So the goal is to get as many good players as possible and let them figure it out. The only time we appear to not be okay with that is at the quarterback spot. Just take a look around the country at programs that have had margin for error because their guys left. Bama had a guy transfer. Clemson had guys transfer. Ohio State had guys transfer. Oklahoma had guys transfer. Georgia had guys transfer. And Michigan just had a guy transfer. Like, are you picking up what I'm putting down?
I am.
Yeah, we've whipped ourselves into this beaten dog syndrome where it's like, hey man, we just need one guy. And it doesn't matter who that one guy is, but that's not how it works.
Right. But more times than not,
you need as many good guys as possible.
But more times than not, right? One guy's already there, so you go and recruit another guy. So maybe that's how the Huskers are looking at it. Should we ask BC?
Yeah, let's ask BC.
Let's bring in Brian Christopherson now. Brian, a fantastic conversation to open the day about the position at quarterback and, the buzz that surrounds the Dylan Raiola news. And I shouldn't say news. I should just say the Twitter post that we saw him photographed next to IGC. Of course, Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Brian, what do you think? Like, is this a position where you're okay with just going after one guy and sticking to one guy and then figuring it out later? Or do you think that you go after no matter who they are and not put somebody on a pedestal and only pursue Dylan Raiola in this case?
I think it's always useful to have your board set and you have your guy that you definitely want here. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if there's a couple others that you have communicated with that you can build a relationship with that you really believe in, then you go after them. But the thing about the quarterback position as it stands right now, Nebraska, let's say Raiola didn't end up at Nebraska. Gasp. I know if that happens. But let's say that didn't happen. You could, in theory, take that into the portal season next December and still end up bringing in somebody to basically fill that space if you went vacant with a high school player. So I don't think if Nebraska misses on that, it means necessarily there's not a quarterback coming, but maybe it's coming a different route. You know what I mean? Maybe it's coming via the portal or something like that. So there's different options to get there. I mean, right now the room is pretty loaded up, but we know how that can change by the minute. Guys are going to go through the spring and we'll see who all stays. And if there's anybody who departs there at this moment, there's a ton of depth in that room. But I also get Damon's point. I want dudes there. I mean, sometimes it does seem like people almost get worried if there's too many and someone's going to get their feelings hurt. This is big time, like I want that competition and I want it at every position. And I definitely want it at quarterback. And Damon's right. If you look at programs that have been elite, they've had multiple guys where they could turn another direction if they had to. And let's also be honest, that's a position nowadays where it's tough to get a guy through the entire season without getting him injured.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You want to know what really started this whole conversation? Like, if you're like, oh man, where did this come from? it was bothersome. And this is independent of how good you think Danny is or not at Bellevue West. Okay. This is not a talent thing. I'm saying when I read and see that, that's okay, he can go, we've got this in the hopper, I think that is a very, very bad way to look at how to build a program. Because two things happen. Number one, you're speaking to existence, lack of competition, which whether it's inadvertent or not, it's really what we're saying. But the other thing is, you know who probably couldn't care less, that's being painted, could be perceived as being painted in a light that doesn't enjoy competition, is Dylan Raiola. Because what do we say? Oh, well, he's not going to SC. SC has another 5-star. Well, he could come to Nebraska because he could do X, Y, and Z, and they're not recruiting anybody else. Like, those are narratives that don't, like, they're kind of made up, right? Like, Raiola's going to go to the best place for him, regardless of who's there. It's not like he's saying, "Hey, don't recruit other." That's not what he's about. And it's not to say that we can't look at quarterbacks and say these guys typically don't stick around anyway once you reach a certain talent benchmark on any team. So it's okay if that happens at Nebraska too.
Yeah. Well,
that's where the whole thing started.
Yeah, I don't think people should say, "Oh, well, they already got one in the hopper," because we don't know if they have one in the hopper for sure yet. And Danny Kalen is a very good player, and I wish him nothing but the best. I like the way Rule's staff has talked about in-state recruiting, though, with guys, even if they don't end up here. He's made this a point in press conferences to speak about how he really wants Nebraska guys to succeed no matter what. And I mentioned this the other day, but I remember 24/7 Sports wrote an update on Kalen a few weeks ago, and it really didn't have much about Nebraska or anything about Nebraska in it. And Matt Rule retweeted it. And I just thought that was a sign of, like, this is, he was basically saying, I want this guy to succeed no matter where he goes. And he's a Nebraska kid, and you wish him the best. And you never know what's going to come around too. Like I said, guys come back through the portal sometimes in this era. And also it's only March, with recruiting, we got to remember that. And I'm not taking away from any commitments that happen now, because those mean something. And that was a big moment for Kalen. But this is still a long way until signing day with everybody. So you got to always keep that in mind.
Should we bubble quarterbacks, though, as like the only position group that you don't need competition, that you're okay with not having competition because you are solidifying, like, hey, the 5-star is the guy for me? Are quarterbacks the exception to the rule?
No, but I just think in this class, Nebraska is going to take one guy, whether that would be Ryle or anybody else, because of their numbers at the situation right now. I mean, they're already trying to whittle down their roster. And like I said earlier, their QB depth at the moment is pretty full. So you kind of got to evaluate it by the minute. And right now, you wouldn't take more than one probably at that position in this class, just by the numbers that you already have. I mean, we've got guys we don't even know about yet, or what this staff thinks about here. You got to remember that part. I mean, like a Richard Torres is going to want to show what he's about to this staff. There's guys who I think the fan base is probably cutting out of the mix, but maybe this staff sees something in, like a Heinrich Harburg or whomever. They want their opportunity to go fight, and you got to give it to them. So I do always think, like, if you had a room per se where there was like 2 or 3 QBs in it, that was it right now, then by all means, it's not a position you bubble up and say you just go after one guy. You would go after 2 in this class, but the numbers are such right now that you wouldn't. So I understand where, if Raiola comes, that's obviously going to be a huge deal. If he doesn't, there is still ways to a quarterback, and it could be a non-traditional method too, through the portal or something else in December. It's just we got to look at the landscape a little differently than we used to a couple years ago.
PC is so where do you kind of fall in that pendulum of, okay, I think quarterbacks have to be comfortable and confident in where they are to function at a high level versus you need a little fire under your feet in order to produce? Do you whittle it down to coaching and culture, or do you think that's something that's intrinsic, that needs to be intrinsic at the quarterback spot?
You're just saying like the makeup of the guy,
like the competitiveness of the position.
Yeah. I want a guy who I don't think this is just big talk on the radio, but I think at that position you want a guy who is like, yeah, bring on whoever. Like, do you want, first off, you want to start there, just that sort of mentality, like, okay, there's these guys that let's have this competition and let's see what it's all about. Like, I like the fact that Jeff Sims showed up knowing that Casey Thompson's around. I like the fact that Casey Thompson's still here right now, and there could be a competition there. Like, I like guys who are saying, okay, he came in, I think I can still do it better. And if I were a coach, I would want to have that mentality as a starting point at that position. But then it's going to take, it's going to come down to that guy first off who doesn't turn the ball over. I think that's the one. We can talk about this and that, but Matt Rule, in every interview I've heard him speak on the QBs, has kind of brought up, like, who's going to protect the football for me? That's going to be the biggest thing. And part of that is also going to be who connects the quickest with Satterfield and that offensive coaching bunch and just knows this system and sort of what's expected of them. And they just are on the same page with how to do things. So, how that person takes to these specific coaching voices is obviously going to be a huge deal. But I like the fact that there are guys in that room who have not run from competition. I mean, heck, Logan Smothers has stuck around way longer than people thought he would stick around. I appreciate that. And guys, even if they do go to the portal at some point, we have seen in that room, there is a makeup of guys who don't just go the first minute something isn't going their way. Because that wouldn't be a true way to paint that room.
Yeah. Do you remember the talks? And listen, I know this is turning into defend Dylan Raiola's competitiveness hour, but I just remember it's Keinholz, right? Lincoln. Am I pronouncing it right? Mm-hmm. It's Keinholz.
Yep.
When he said, "Well, I definitely think Raiola's decommitment has something to do with," then it was kind of a little snarky barb, and I'm thinking, I'm not mad at him for saying it. I'm more bothered by the fact, like, as receivers of information, we actually think quarterbacks are groomed to think that way. And maybe it's personal to me, BC, because I think the guys that love to compete, that are tough, that find a way to win are how you win football games. And I know that to be the case, whether it's at the high school level or the collegiate level, and even in an NFL locker room, right? So I bristle up a little bit at the notion that it's okay to be saying that quarterbacks don't want competition if other good quarterbacks are on the roster, because those guys aren't going to win. They're just, and so when quarterbacks leave school, sometimes it's for better opportunities, and sometimes, listen, you're only playing one at a time. I don't think Joe Burrow lacked competitiveness because he wasn't playing. He's a couple guys he's playing behind. They're in the NFL too, right? Like. Mm-hmm. So yeah. It can be different for different people. I just don't like that we protect and we coddle quarterback psyches like they're just going to hop around, when if that's the case, you don't want those guys anyway, because you're not going to win.
Yeah. Well, I hope people aren't painting Dylan Raiola that way, because I mean, look at the programs he's looking at. I mean, besides Nebraska, he knows if he goes to any of those programs, you're going to have to fight like heck to win a job. So, I wouldn't make much of anybody who held that opinion. Or I think we got to be careful on anything to really speak for Dylan Raiola or that family right now. Like, they've done some interviews here and there, but they've been, I don't think they've asked for the fanfare as much as the trumpets have come to their door. You know what I mean? So you got to remember that part. as we go through this.
BC, we're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Toss him a follow on Twitter at Husker 24/7 BC. Less than a week away before the start of spring practice. And I brought this up to DB maybe a week and a half ago about, why Coach Rule decided to give the week of spring break off and not work up until that point. And I said, well, maybe it's good for the players to kind of, refresh their minds, right? Go home, relax, get comfortable. But he brought up a good point about how when he was a player, it was like, we didn't want to be seen like, hey, we had a days off mentality. So my question to you is this: how many players do you actually think took this time off? Or do you think, in worry of falling behind, many continued working to show that they did have that no days off mentality?
I think there's a lot of guys still working behind the scenes. I think it's a good week to get right mentally. Like, you can still put in your physical work, but also refresh the mind for what's about to come. And, we've seen a few guys who obviously went home or they went to other places, and you can still work out there. I mean, we saw
Maverick Noonan.
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. And then you obviously.
He's a monster. He really is a monster.
Maverick.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a lot like his twin brother, but he's a monster. I just chuckle.
You sort of expect there's no way he's not going to have some success here. And when you see Danny, you're also like, could you give me 15 reps right now? And you kind of think he could probably still do it. So
my absolute favorite thing to say, other than being a bedwetter, doesn't need a babysitter. He's working.
He does it for him.
He's working.
I'll tell you what, kind of got away from what I was saying, but if you look at Mavericks position group and just the linemen there, I'm a little worried about the defensive line going in the spring, like the depth of like who's proven.
I get it.
But I also love the guys. There's like 6 guys who I'm excited about, all of them that are recruited that are high school guys like Noonan and, Vincent Carroll Jackson and Riley Van Poppel. And I'm going to leave off like 3 guys that aren't coming to my mind. Prince Will. I mean, this is a very good
big MJ Sherman guy.
Big MJ.
Yes. This is a very good class of guys like that. It's just a matter of, is there somebody there who can pop up right immediately? I don't know. But I like that they have those type of players at what I think is one of the most important spots to have a shot in the Big Ten, where if they can develop them in a year or two, that could be a good crew for a long time. In the immediate future this spring, you're looking at like Elijah Judy, who I wrote about yesterday, and you're like,
that's good on up. East, B.
Come on up, man. Because, there's not a lot of experience on that front. There's Robinson and there's Stephon Wynn and Nash. And after that, there's not hardly any snaps that have been taken. So that's the question of, and I know they can bend their defense and all this and that, but I still feel like you need, 6 to 8 true D linemen. I know the edge counts to that, but that's a spot that's going to be pretty interesting. Who can come who can have some giddy up to their development.
I'm such a loser. I watched when I was watching Nebraska. Baby. Yeah, me and Beck. Last night I was watching KU in Nebraska and from 95, and then I was watching the kickoff classic against A&M. I think it was 88.
Yeah.
I was lamenting over Ken Clark. And
we're similar nerds.
Yeah. So, and A&M played a 3-4, and they had like John Roper and Wallace. They had like a really good linebacking core. And I was just thinking to myself, with the flexibility that they have on defense to do different things, would it be unexpected to think that a vast majority of those jobs could go into fall camp with some uncertainty?
No, I would expect it. I mean, I think you maybe get your base idea of like who's got a fighting shot, but I would think it would be hard to separate just by the end of spring. I know they want to get a lot of install in, and then you kind of throw a lot at guys quickly, as opposed to having to throw more of that scheme stuff at them in the fall. You want to put it all on their plate now, and then they can process it. They will make some mistakes along the way, and you see who handles what. But with that, to the question you're asking, Damon, I think that would sort of bring you to the idea that some guys are going to maybe struggle with some concepts right at first, and that's going to take some time as guys sort of, and this guy maybe figures it out a little quicker than that guy, but maybe by the first or second week of fall, there's somebody who's really come along and now has it and has made a case for himself. So I have to think that's a spot where you definitely go into the defense is just really fun to think about in a depth chart sort of competition way to me, because the secondary's got a billion guys right now. And
Literally.
so some guys are going to have to figure out who, this spring, let's be honest, there's going to be a few guys who like, where do I fit maybe by the end of it. And then there's going to be a couple guys you wonder if they could get moved along. And Matt Rule and the staff have talked about how that's been a magic formula for them, figuring out how to change guys from this spot to that spot and hybrid type players. But then there's what Damon's talking about with just that, like, who's your edge guys? Who are your linebackers? How are they separate from one another? Or are they in this scheme? Are those just labels the media and the outside people are going to use, and it might not matter as much to them? All that stuff is really interesting to me.
I just was watching, like, again, I go down these rabbit holes, but I'm watching, I think it was Danny that tweeted out the picture of Maverick with his, he was doing hang cleans and then, with a squat, and it was so textbook. I was joking. I was like, God, this thing has to be edited. Like, he is so explosive in the movement. And then I watch him, and I was talking to Warren yesterday all day, and I watch his get off, and I just think there are guys that I'm watching right now, and he's one of them, where I compare it to other guys. Like, for instance, Maverick Noonan is light years ahead of where Garrett Nelson was coming out of high school at the same age. And Nelson turned out to be a very good player for Nebraska. So it's hard for me to not get excited if this is kind of the bar, if this is the bar and this is how guys are being groomed to compete, it's hard not to get excited. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
I mean light years. He is light years. No disrespect. At the same age, give me Maverick Noonan all day long.
Yeah, and Garrett played. I think
he played young. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there you go. So Maverick Noonan will start, is what.
That's it. Brian Christopherson, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, B.
Great conversation there.
Pencil and Maverick Noonan.
Yeah,
but I can't clean like that.
I bet Andy Kendeigh can clean though.
Yeah,
and we'll talk to him next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
While Maverick Noonan was getting work done in the gym, I was enjoying an Acres Ale on my couch. Acres Ale is that one beer that you can pair with any sporting event. I paired it with the first 4 games, and I think you should too. If you haven't tried Acres Ale yet, go out, get yourself a case. You will not be sorry. Acres Ale is light. It's clean. It's probably like your favorite light beer, but the best part about it, it's local. Try Acres Ale. Now,
I'll take it.
Who else is local? It's not just Maverick Noonan. It's our guy at KETV, the sports director over there. Andy Kendeigh joining us now on the show as he does every other week. AK, good morning.
Morning, boys. Pleasure to follow an ale commercial.
Says the guy, the Wisconsinite that his team spotted cow, right?
Yeah,
Bring it on.
Mixing and matching. I tell you though, that Nebraska brew, it'll win you over, AK.
I'm more than happy to try it.
Andy, we were talking at the beginning of the show, and it was all centered around Aaron Rodgers. And that kind of led us into talking a bunch about quarterbacks then at the collegiate level and then Dylan Raiola. But DB goes, we need to ask Kendeigh about how he feels about Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers were indeed to return to Green Bay, do you think that he would be equally loved as he once was prior to the last 2 years? Or is it just kind of like his diva personality that Packers fans just say okay to because he wins games?
I think that's an interesting question. I think some Packer fans have had enough, But the bottom line is that if he wins football games, people will love him. The curious thing about this whole situation with Aaron Rodgers is that he lived through this one time before and watched how the public lived through the Brett Favre saga, and it's turned into the same thing, like version 2.0. You know, those my poor colleagues back in Wisconsin, every day it's, did Aaron Rodgers say this? Oh, he said something to a web guy on this podcast or on this show. You got to go find the clip. Oh my God, it's the breaking news. It's the top story, and everybody's eagerly awaiting his appearance on the Pat McAfee show. Something that 10 years ago you'd laugh at if you said that out loud. But that's the way we are, and I think there's a growing portion of the fan base that have had enough of Aaron Rodgers, and we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I don't know how that's going to end.
Cautionary tale, or yeah, I could see it. I mean, would you have the Stones? And if you're the Jets, and maybe it's Diana Rossini's fault for leaking it, but I mean, if I said, "Hey, AK, you know what? This big red zone thing, man. I need this, right. And this." Like, are you telling that to anybody?
Well, I don't know how it gets out, right? But it gets out for a reason. And DB, let me just say that if you asked for a laundry list of demands, we would meet.
Oh,
just put that in the back of your pocket.
Yeah, okay? just me, you, Ellie, and Maddie. I'm good. I don't need much else.
But it is interesting, you know. Isn't Aaron Rodgers the same guy who complained that he had crappy receivers? Now he wants some of those crappy receivers.
Yep, come with him.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, this guy is more puzzling. I mean, I know Aaron. I was there when he was drafted. I interviewed him plenty of times. Good fella, but man, he's gotten a little sideways in his later years, and I don't get it. I don't know if he loves the attention. He obviously does, or else he wouldn't do some of this stuff. But yeah, he's a perplexing, interesting enigma.
What does Aaron Rodgers love more? Does he love playing football, or does he love being the center of attention? That is the question at the end of the day.
Well, you'll get that answer pretty quick, right?
Well, we sure hope so, because I'm sick and tired of it. As a Bears fan, I am sick and tired of hearing Aaron Rodgers' name in the news.
Well, it's interesting too, guys, and I had this conversation a little bit with Mike Patterson over the tournament time last couple of weeks in Lincoln. He's a huge Bears fan, and what they did was eye-opening and has really, I think, has set the North on a new course, because we saw what happens with the Lions. We know what we have with the Vikings. And now the Bears have improved them, at least on paper. They have the ability to improve their roster with an amazing trade. It's not your dad's NFC North anymore. No question.
AK, I always talk about this with a variety of things, and usually it's Nebraska related, but this time it's Creighton with adjusting expectations and recalibrating. When you look at this team, what they're capable of versus what they were thought to be capable of versus where they're going, have you adjusted, or is your bar still, this is where this basketball team should be now that we're in mid-March?
I think I've adjusted a little bit, but knowing the ceiling is still as high as it could be. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a team, I think we'd all agree that if they got bounced in the first round Friday, would it stun you? Maybe not, anymore. If they show up like they played on Friday night, they will get bounced. But that being said, they played some of the prettiest basketball I've seen across the country in a year that really doesn't have a standalone, great, outstanding favorite team, right? So if they made it to the Final Four, would I be surprised? Nope. If they got bounced in the first round, would I be surprised? Nope. It's just all about what team shows up and how they handle the situation and matchups going forward on Friday and then Sunday. And, I think if you're saying what's the bar, I think anything less than second weekend, I would think most people would agree, man, that's kind of a bummer, right? But we'll see what happens. It's an interesting draw for them. NC State is no gimme, obviously, and then you take your chances to see what happens on Sunday. But you got to win first to get to Sunday.
Are they undervalued as a 6, or I guess is it because of the inconsistencies that they've shown sparks of throughout the season that's right for the team?
I think they're seated I think they're seated right. I will tell you this. I think you're definitely at a benefit being a 6 and knowing your opponent than being a 6 like Iowa State and just figuring out who your opponent is last night. I mean, you're doing double the prep at that point. Like poor Creighton, the women. I mean, they don't even know who they're playing on Friday.
Yeah,
they'll find out tonight. I mean, that's kind of you work all year, you get a 6, and then you got to wait, and then you got less than 48 hours to prepare your opponent. Is that fair? I don't know. Just to get an extra team in the tournament, an extra at-large team. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
AK, obviously, folks taking advantage of your talents. Always state basketball time, man. You're front and center. Where does that you don't get a chance to just solely delve into high school for that long, that often. Is that a break? Is it refreshing? Is it I like the interviews because just because it's engaging with kind of being easygoing. Like, did you appreciate that time of the year as a break or something you look forward to?
I call it exhausting, horrible fun. It is seriously one of my favorite times of year. And then come Sunday, I just want to sleep. Yeah. But I will tell you, it is such a great event. It's like a reunion. You get to see people you really haven't seen all year. You get to connect with people you really haven't been able to connect. It's tough for me, anchoring every night to get out and do, personal interviews during the season because usually they're timed out about 5 or 5:30 or whatever, depending on practice schedules. But, spending time with Coach Ethel Miller at the North or before a game or Coach Brodsky, obviously Coach Woodard and Coach Jurgens, those guys, it's really fascinating to hear their take on things before and then obviously after the game. The challenging thing is having to talk to some of these coaches right after they had their hearts ripped out and they're at the lowest of lows after they came so close to the ultimate prize and then have to collect themselves and do a live interview on a statewide broadcast. That's the tough thing. You try to be as compassionate as you can because, and I say they don't want it for themselves. They want it for their kids. And that's why they feel so bad.
AK, I saw Fo Woodard on Twitter yesterday put his top all-state tournament teams up there from what he's seen over the course of his lifetime. Who's the best team that you've seen in your lifetime play here in the state of Nebraska? Is it that Bellevue West team of this year, or is it a different one?
Oh, that's a tough question. You're going to get generations arguing stuff. I will say this. Okay, so Bellevue West, since 1960, it's Omaha Central and North South. Those are the only two teams that ran the table in Class A until this year. I lean towards that maybe Omaha Central had a tougher pool competition, but in terms of team, it's tough to argue with what Bellevue West did this year. But, man, Omaha Central was loaded in 2012. I will tell you that.
I still think we're sleeping on that South team from 2016. But that Central team that Central team in 2013 was unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Some good ones.
Andy Kendeigh, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, AK.
Hey, I want to go back to a Nebraska football prompt I saw yesterday. Stick around for that.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to the show. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Before we go anywhere, I want to take a moment and tell you about Big Brothers Big Sisters and their mission to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands targets the children who need us most, including those living in single-parent homes, children in foster care, growing up in poverty, or coping with parental incarceration. Big Brothers Big Sisters carefully makes matches based on numerous factors to ensure each big and little have a solid foundation to stand on. It is a tremendous organization. I feel like everybody should get involved if they can. Sacrifice some time if you are able, and go to mentoromaha.org to sign up and become a big today. We talked to Sam McEwen on Monday, and Sam McEwen had mentioned, and was it something that he said, or was it something you asked him? I can't remember now, but it was something that you guys were talking about, and it was reestablishing the pipeline of Kansas City and Missouri.
Yeah,
when it comes to recruiting. Shane,
Coach Rule was at the coaches clinic.
Shane, you got that clip?
Yeah, it's been good. Nebraska spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get into St. Louis over several coaching staff. And I'm not saying that's not important, because St. Louis has turned out some incredible players. They went to Ohio State, mostly Oklahoma, a few to Missouri. But they've lost the grip in Kansas City since Bo left. And how many good players they got out of Kansas City under Bo? Pretty good players. The Davis twins, Malik Collins, Freedom Akamaladun. Yeah, Michael Rose-Ivy. I mean, there's a whole bunch of players they got out of Kansas City. And since Bo left, Bo Pelini of all people, since Bo left, and John Garrison left, and whatever, they've gotten Bo Wilson and then Jaden Doss just here recently. That's it. And that's just not good enough. And so Rule going down there, I think, was a great thing.
And so then I read a piece yesterday by Michael Bruntz of 24/7 Sports, and him talking about the current assistant director of player personnel, Keith Williams, and how he's seen current recruits have a similar opportunity to what he once had when he was recruited to play football at Nebraska, because it was in that transition of Callahan to Pelini. And he mentioned how Nebraska football is in a special place right now for recruits to create a legacy. Why did I just throw all of those things at you in one piece? Well, it goes back to Keith Williams being a St. Louis kid and able to kind of spearhead that recruitment down in Missouri so that they can grab more than just 2 guys per year in a state that essentially borders the home state.
Yeah, and I see him in passing quite a bit. Didn't really get a chance because obviously can't speak, but saw him watching a little basketball. I actually saw a lot of football guys from a variety of schools watching a lot of state basketball, but I saw Keith Williams on the way out and seen a couple of more of their staff a few days before that. And I talked to Coach Rule last week, and he was just getting ready to leave to go to KC, speaking at a convention. And, basically, I think in short, his thing was the states where I think they want to reestablish themselves are no question Kansas, Missouri, and Texas. I think
they've done it with Texas.
You'll see a very concentrated focus on making sure that those states that have once been, I don't know about staples, but they've been good to Nebraska historically, that they'll have a chance to bring that back or wake those places up again, as he likes to say.
It seems like that recruiting pitch has been around for a while, though, when I say, oh, you can create a legacy here at Nebraska. And maybe it just seems like that because the last 4 years has felt like 40 years. But I want to ask you, DB, because you weren't a part of a transition, but just as a
little.
Well, okay. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, because the revisionist history is that we were always winning when I got there. When I got there, we couldn't win the big one, and we were chokers. So
good point.
That it's all relative.
So as a former player, put yourself in recruit shoes nowadays. Would this be an influence of you or for you? Would it be an influence that, hey, you can change the program? At what point, though, is that not worth its weight in gold, now that I think about it? Or does that ever go away? Like, would that influence you, though, knowing that you could create a legacy? Because I think that boils back to our initial conversation about Dylan Raiola, and that's been the big push for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me as an individual, just knowing my personality, like if you're asking young me, I don't know if that would have moved my needle. Creating a legacy. I think, for me, during that stretch, I wanted to be a part of something good. But I lacked objectivity because I grew up loving Nebraska. So I was a little jaded, even though I did explore my options. I don't know if that registers with kids, because when you talk about legacy, there has to be this mutual frame of reference. There has to be like this commonality as a starting point, right? Like my own, a legacy here. Are those intertwined? Like, can you get me to see where my value adds to
definitely
what you want to accomplish here, right? Like that, because that's really the key to recruiting, right? Is where do I fit and how do you see me? So those two things have to have some point of connectedness, at least in my opinion. I don't know if that would, I'm just being honest, I don't know if that would move my needle. Because I want to be, at the end of the day, I want to be good. I want to be developed, and I want to win. Now, in what order will those be? I don't even know. Even today, would I be a guy that would fast forward to say, can you get me to the league? I don't even know if I would think that. I think I would just say, can you get better and how can I contribute? I still think that would be the core of who I am.
That's interesting. That if I came to you and said, because everybody's dream is to play at the highest level, right? And to go pro. If I said to you, I can get you there.
Maybe. I don't know.
I've been, because this is Matt Rule's situation, right? He's like, I was there. It didn't work for me there, but I have all the connections still there. And I can help you get there. I'm known as somebody that's been able to develop players, and I can develop you. Maybe it's more this, because you're trying to do anything and everything to get guys you want playing at your school, since you're not always going to be the biggest recruit, right? that's the pitch for this coaching staff, at least. They don't always go after the 4-star, 5-star guy. More times than not, they're going after a 3-star or below and going after that athletic guy that kind of fits the team now. But still, what Coach Rhule is able to do is tell those guys, hey, I can develop you into your ultimate goal. What you've been watching every weekend growing up after Saturday is watching your favorite football team play on Sunday. I can get you there. I can help you get there.
I think the key, though, is you can't skip steps, right? So whatever he's saying has to be connected to Nebraska winning games, because you can't – I don't think in good faith you could have the conversation with a potential recruit and say, hey, man, listen, I can get you to the next level, without talking about the importance and the role that Nebraska plays in that. I don't know if that would make sense to me as a player. I think the disadvantage Nebraska has is people probably don't associate getting to the next level with being with that program. So he has to draw the parallels between him being the overseer of this program now, what his track record has been, and the byproduct of those first two things is getting to the next level. Because I just think it would be, would I believe you if I wasn't winning games? Like, so you would be asked to be believing, oh, listen, you're a guy that's got Sunday ability. Hey, you know what? I can get you there regardless of if we win games or not. I don't know if I could get you to see that.
It'd also be hard for me to stay engaged if we aren't winning games.
Yeah, so I say all that to say I think you can't skip the middle steps, because at some point, and I don't know when it is, like in theory, but at some point it has to be about what Nebraska can do for you versus what you can do for Nebraska. Maybe that's some utopia, but even like the winning schools, it's more about the school than it is the player. Hey, Alabama can get me to where I want to go. Hey, Clemson can get me to where I want to go. Hey, Ohio State can get me to where I want to go.
Culture in the present.
Yeah, so I think at some point, and you can't do that without winning, right? So his track record can be solid, but people still have to want to come. People still have to want to come to your school, and I don't think you can fast forward to the big picture without making Nebraska relevant in the puzzle. Like somehow Nebraska and that staff and Coach Rhule have to be relevant in painting that picture.
When talking culture, in going back to the point that led off this conversation before we take it to break, the good news is Kansas City, St. Louis, the state of Missouri, the state of Kansas, it's the Midwest. And where's Nebraska? In the Midwest. Yeah. It won't be a culture shock. And that is exactly what Williams added to the piece when talking about going to recruit players. You don't have to sell Nebraska. They grew up in the Midwest. They know what a field looks like.
Yeah.
They know what a big stretch of land of farm looks like. It's not like a kid coming from Texas or Florida or Cali. So reestablishing that pipeline is definitely important. We're talking to Kerry Miller next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Purdue lobs it to the other end. Zach Edey knocks it out of bounds, and the Purdue Boilermakers are the Big Ten tournament champions.
Final 9 seconds. Everybody on their feet. Proctor grinning ear to ear. And for Duke, the dynasty continues. There's McClendon for the win. It's no good. And Arizona is Pac-12 tournament champions again.
And that'll do it. 65-51, Marquette. The Golden Eagles are Big East tournament champions.
Hey, real quick, welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the Morning. If you watched a little bit of the Southeast Missouri State or Texas Corpus Christi last night, there's an inordinate amount of fouls. You may need some workers' comp claims. A lot of physicality. You need Dyer Law. They'll help ensure that your right to protect you to get the settlement you deserve. You can call Dyer Law Team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyerlaw.com to chat with trusted professionals. Coach Lutz, he's probably going to bypass the workers' comp claim. But, man, does Southeast Missouri State foul a ton. I think they lead that country.
They do. And his team got brutally abolished.
I don't know how they made their free throws, though. I mean, good on them.
But that's something SEMO didn't do and ultimately cost them in the end. Let's bring in Kerry Miller now and talk college basketball like we are doing this week entirely. Because it's the start of March Madness. At Karen's James on Twitter, college basketball for Bleacher Report. Kerry Miller now on the show. Kerry, good morning.
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm surprised. You can tell who didn't do any research before that game last night. Like SEMO and Corpus Christi, like the two most foul-prone, foul-drawing teams. We knew it was going to be a hideous rock fight.
I feel so. Listen, I do it for a living in football, so I don't like to bang on other guys a ton, but man, I kind of felt for Avery Johnson a little. And I know you get in that role and you're like, well, come on, man. Like, he's a professional. You got to do your job. But boy, that was tough. That one was tough, Kerry.
I think he did the the Conference USA tournament as well. And like every time I turned on one of those games, I'm like, man, I'd like to enjoy this game, but just something about Avery. I think either you love Avery Johnson or you love Bill Walton, but you don't love both. And I love Bill Walton.
I do too. Isn't that? Yeah, I do too. I'm not just having campfire and s'mores today. Kerry.
I'm not a huge Bill Walton fan. Not me.
I want to be entertained at midnight.
Well, hey, you know what? You're right. He's definitely entertaining.
So which of the typically the play-in teams win another game in the tournament since the play-ins started?
Mm-hmm.
Who's the most likely candidate for you going forward?
Well, not Texas A&M Corpus Christi, but yeah, I thought it would be the Arizona State Nevada winner. I do think certainly the Pitt Iowa State matchup will be interesting. I don't know if Pitt's going to have Federico available. That will change things. Iowa State should be able to win in the paint, and then the reason I'm on the Arizona State Nevada is because TCU with the Eddie Lampkin situation, him leaving the team, and his mom wasn't too happy about Jamie Dixon is a whole mess. And I think that's not a good place to be in, heading into the tournament.
Two of the best teams defensively in that other matchup, 6 and 11, Iowa State and Pittsburgh. I mean, do you see either of these teams eclipsing 62 points?
No, probably not. Yeah, especially I would say maybe if Iowa State's able to just dominate in the paint, if Federico is out. I mean, the Diaz-Graham brothers or Graham-Diaz brothers, I always interchange the two. I forget what it is, but I mean, they're good, but I don't think they'll be able to handle, Sunyi.
Kerry, when you're taking a look at what's worked, right? Top 39 in offensive efficiency, top 22 in defensive efficiency. Those are the teams that typically cut down the nets.
Mm-hmm.
Analytics is a weird deal this year with the ebb and flow. Do you like analytics to hold true to form, or is this finally one of those years where when we pre-talk chaos, we actually get chaos?
No, I mean, I'm a slave to Ken Pom. I think I've got Houston winning it all. They've been number one on Ken Pom like all season. I picked Gonzaga however many years in the past because they were number one on Ken, and they never did win it all. But I do think you got to be well-rounded. You got to be able to, defend when your shots aren't falling. You got to be able to drain shots when the other team is making good shots against a good defense. Like that's why you don't see just a bad offense or a bad defense ever really make the Final Four. But yeah, I think at this time of year, you just got to be balanced. You got to have some depth, and you got to be able to really win any kind of game, because there's no telling what your draw is going to be, or even how your opponent is going to play on any given night.
Kerry brought up Ken Pom. What do you think I'm going to bring up?
I don't know. He said depth too. So,
Kerry, you brought up Ken Pom, and I'm going to bring up my favorite team in the NCAA
here we go.
tournament. It's the team facing probably another team that could win the entire tournament. Colgate. Colgate is one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to 3-point shooting percentage. They don't foul. They are a good defensive team. I feel like they got snubbed at a 15, but are they, because we've seen it before, are they the 15 seed out of the 15s available that would be the one to upset in the first round?
Yeah, I think so. I think Texas is going to have a really hard time coming out of that pod because, like you said, Colgate shoots a ton of threes. They're number one in effective field goal percentage. They're, I think, top 10 in turnover percentage. And Penn State is like the exact same team. No offensive rebounds, doesn't draw fouls, but just can shoot the hell out of the three. And
can't play help defense, so you have to coach it to the contrary. It's like
right. One of those, if Penn State does get past Texas A&M, I'm not convinced of that, but one of those two teams is going to be on fire from three against Texas. I mean, you just got to play the odds. So we'll see if they can survive both of those games.
Okay, when you analytics, it's great, right? I reference numbers all the time, but I'm kind of an eyeball guy. I like UCLA. I know some of the experts like UCLA, but what I don't like that my eye tells me, number one, they're not as healthy as I'd like, but I think toughness is a thing, right? And I don't want to get into how games could potentially be officiated or not officiated, but how do I get over whether I think a team can embrace or handle touching versus being touched?
Yeah, I mean, that's an element. If you're saying UCLA isn't tough, I would have to disagree.
Well, I'm talking about the game would need to be officiated a certain way depending on their matchup is what I'm saying. Not that they lack the toughness, because it's Cronin, right? I mean, he'll figure it out. That's how he
right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, Cronin teaches these guys to be tough. I thought that Pac-12 championship against Arizona, they were already down Jalen Clark, lost Bona as well the game before, I believe, and then the two big guys that they did have fouled out, and then they still almost won. Like, I think that shows you how resilient they can be. I don't know how physically tough they can be, but I think Jaquez has just improved by leaps and bounds on both ends of the floor. Could really be. I mean, he's not a guard. He wouldn't be the Kemba Walker type of guy, but I think he can be the guy who just puts the team on his back and carries them through the tournament. But like you said,
like a Johnny Husang
with Clark out and with Bona questionable, I in late February, everybody was in love with UCLA. Like, even before March, I was already at the point like, I'm gonna fade UCLA just because everybody's picking them. But now it's gone the opposite way. Everybody's afraid of them because Clark's out.
Hey, Kerry, I've been seeing every analyst out there, whenever they get to their Final Four, their championship game, and then their eventual champion, it ends up being a 1 seed. Every person that I've seen puts a 1 seed as their champion. And now it's a small sample size. I've only seen about 3, 4, maybe 5 people do it. But our poll question today was, take it or leave it. A 1 seed will win the NCAA tournament again this year. Would you take it or would you leave it?
I would take it. I mean, I think there are really good non-1 seeds for sure. I mean, Connecticut as a 4 could win it all. Duke as a 5, the way they've been playing lately, they could win it all. And then Arizona as a 2, definitely a very strong candidate. Those are the other teams I have in my Final Four, but I do have Houston taking it all. And even though I have those 3 teams in, wouldn't surprise me at all if Kansas repeats or if Alabama continues the, how well they played in the SEC tournament and ends up winning it all, because I think peak Alabama was the best team during the regular season.
This goes just contrary to what I talked about all season long following the Big Ten, because I always liked Indiana when they got healthy. I liked their front court. This is back when they had the X-Man and Hood Schifino. and I'm like, gosh, I know they turn it over a little too much, and Kopp is streaky, but I like the way that they play. But as I'm kind of watching this thing, man, Kent State's, and I said this all week, like, if they win 1, I think they can win 2. Mm-hmm. They don't foul. They're really good defensively with 2-point field goal percentages. You don't have a ton of assists against them. They don't turn it over. They control tempo. Man, how dangerous is Kent State, in your opinion, with the Hoosiers?
Yeah, that's been my mid-major that I've been in love with. I think I did a Cinderella rankings piece in like mid-January, and I had Kent State at number 1. They almost won at Houston, almost won at Gonzaga, and I think that's a real key for mid-majors. Like, you look at, Florida Atlantic or Charleston, it's like, yeah, you won 31 games, but you didn't play a single team that made the tournament. How are we supposed to have any faith in you? But Kent State proved they can hang with those teams, and they proved in the MAC championship that they can do it with offense as well. Scored like 93 on Toledo. So I think that's a very dangerous team. I think they got not the most favorable draw would have been facing Tennessee in the first round. They would kill Tennessee without Zakai Ziegler, but I think they can beat Indiana, and they could absolutely beat Miami or Drake.
Yeah. We live in a town, Kerry, where the preseason ranked number 9 overall team houses, and now they are a 6 seed going into the tournament, which, if we were basing it off of early season expectations, they would have likely fell at a 3, maybe even a 2.
Mm-hmm.
Where you see Creighton today in the situation that they're in, because You get really good days where all 5 are connecting and it seems like nobody can beat this team. And then you get other days to where the shooting just isn't there. And either Creighton loses by 20, they could lose by 10, and inconsistency really starts to show. Where Creighton is in today, the position they're in, where do you envision them ending up in the tournament?
Yeah, I picked NC State in the first round, but it's entirely a principle thing for me, where when I think a team absolutely did not deserve to get in, does get in, it ends up winning multiple games. It pisses me off to no end. Like certainly Notre Dame last year should not have been in. They won 2 games. Syracuse in 2016 made the Final Four, shouldn't have been in. But if Creighton wins, which it should, if you tell me that game is played in December, it has nothing to do with my stupid ACC bias in the NCAA tournament, I'd be picking Creighton to win. And then in the next round against Baylor, that's a team that's had horrible front court defense issues, and Kalkbrenner leads the nation in true shooting percentage. I mean, they should just throw it to him 95 times and let him shoot all game, and they'll destroy Baylor. But I mean, they're 12, 13, somewhere in that range on KenPom. Like, however much you buy into the analytics, they've been a Sweet 16, Elite 8 caliber team all season long. And I think they got at least a decent first 2 rounds draw.
Now, a little bit different reason, obviously, Chris Beard's episode is Texas related, and Shaka Smart returning a team that wasn't successful intact a year later. But I'll ask you this. When you look at the coaching performance in its totality, who gets the nod, Texas or Marquette?
I would have to go Marquette. I mean, I know what Rodney Terry's been able to do is impressive. I think they absolutely have to give him the job now. I mean, I know he inherited a Ferrari and just didn't crash it. Like, Texas was already a top 10 team and he kept them there, but that easily could have just imploded on them in spectacular fashion. But you know what Shaka did, taking what were they, 9th in the Big East, and now they're a 2 seed, 9th in the preseason poll, excuse me, and just to take that team and turn it around. I mean, I don't know if you want to credit Shaka as much as Tyler Kolek just turning into a god. I mean, when he teed up a shot last season, I think Marquette fans cringed, and now he's their best scorer. Just an incredible breakout season for him. And you know, if Shaka was in the gym with him working on his shot, then yeah, he's the coach of the year.
Kerry, I set the line at 10.5 yesterday. In the last 2 years, when it comes to just strictly rankings, a 9 beats an 8, a 13, goes on to beat a 4. When it comes to just purely the ranking, there have been 10 upsets in the first round. Okay, round 64. If I set the line at 10.5 again this year, would you take the over or the under?
You know, I don't remember the numbers anymore, but I think 2 years ago I went back and looked through like literally all of the tournaments since they expanded to 64 teams and like came up with the average of what it was. And it's around 10 for the first round. I think it's 4 for the second round. And then it's just, there's no rhyme or reason from there. But yeah, I would probably say, I think this year I would say under, because I think the 10s and the 11s are just worse than usual. Like I know every year bracketology, we say, oh, this is the weakest bubble, but all of those bubble teams were just not good this year. But I mean, all of the 9s could upset all of the 8s. So you got 4 right there. We're going to see a couple of 12 and 13 upsets. So maybe we get there, but I would probably go under.
This one's interesting because I think the West is the toughest, but the East region has some. If there were upsets, I'm not overly shocked, right? Obviously an 8-9. If FAU beat Memphis, I wouldn't be shocked. FAU's been good all year. Louisiana's going to give Tennessee fits, I think, with their health potentially. Providence beating Kentucky. I don't know. I mean, Cooley can coach, and Kentucky's Kentucky.
Can play.
So, like, when you look at the regions where the seeds may not hold, but you wouldn't be overly surprised, what region would that be?
No, I'm with you on the East. When I was, filling out my initial gut reaction bracket, I think it was the East and one other region, might have been the West, where I had no first round upsets. Like, didn't even realize it until I was going to write the piece. I was like, oh shoot, I didn't even pick a 9 over an 8 here. What am I doing? But then in the latter rounds of those regions, it was just chaos. So I ended up with UConn facing TCU, and then Duke facing Kentucky. So a 4-6 and a 5-6 from the region where I had no first round upsets. So, we'll see what the early Cinderella situations lead to in the long run, but it's why we love this tournament. It's entirely unpredictable.
Let me sneak in a question here about the Big Ten, just because while I've been writing kind of Indiana, if they take care of the ball and are healthy, Michigan State seems to have the most room for improvement, even at this stage of the season, just because I think they're finally all healthy and they're kind of figuring it out. They're a 7. It's Izzo, it's March. Is that overstated or understated?
I think it's certainly overstated, but I don't think it's malarkey. It does happen. I mean, he only once in his career has gone more than 3 years between Final Four appearances, and it was a 4-year drought. Like, there was one senior class that never saw a Final Four under Izzo, and it's been three tournaments since their last one. I'm not saying they're going to do it as a 7 seed, but they have done it as a 7 seed before. And I think they're going to beat USC at least in the first round. I don't know how they'll fare after that, but yeah,
you run into potentially a great offensive team in Marquette.
Yeah, and Marquette is the most susceptible of the 2 seeds, I think. Not a good rebounding team, despite what we saw in the Big East tournament. Not a great defensive team, but I do think of the Big Ten teams, I'm probably least skeptical about Michigan State, I guess. I think I have the entire Big Ten out before the Sweet 16, though.
Kerry, when you look at the first 4, and this was sparked with some things I saw on social media last night, when you look at the first 4, do you look at it as a tie-over before the 4 greatest days in sports begin, or do you look at it as a waste of time? This doesn't feel like the tournament.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's not a waste of time. I'm not going to say that, but yeah, I'm not glued to the TV. I mean, I was, even for that Miss State Pitt game, I was just, I was working while it was on in the background. I was barely even paying attention to it. Certainly even less so for the 16 seed matchup. So, it is what it is. It's not going to change. If anything, it's going to expand at this point, which is going to make me sick. But I think it's been a good, 12, 13-year run with the first 4. Certainly Dayton loves it. I mean, they sell out that 13,000 seat arena every time. So there's certainly an audience for it, but it's not for everyone.
I know you like Houston as the one to cut down the nets, but let me ask you about another one that I think is extremely motivated, not only because they'll get their head coach back, hopefully, in Bill Self, but because they got shipped to the West, which is brutal. They got skipped by Houston, your team, with an injured Sasser, right? So is there something to Kansas as a dangerous one? It's hard to see that they got shipped to the West as the 4th one. Like, what'd you think with Kansas?
Yeah, and I know somebody who knows somebody on Houston's staff. They said they actually would have preferred the Vegas region anyway, even though geographically, Kansas City is closer to them. If they had been number 1 overall and had their choice, they might have taken Vegas. So to ship Kansas out to the West and match them up with, probably UConn in the Sweet 16 is just brutal. Like, I think UConn is the best of all the 3 and 4 seeds, and they got that draw, and then would have to face either UCLA or Gonzaga after that. It's gonna be tough, but they're used to tough. They've played 24 quad 1 games and won 17 of them, so they certainly have the talent to do it. With Kansas, it's all about DeJuan Harris Jr. I think it's like a 77 O rating. If he's above that, they're like 25-0, and if he's below it, they're 2-5 or something, or 2-7. Excuse me. So it's all going to come down to whether he's showing up. Even though Jalen Wilson is their star, he's their enigmatic X factor.
All right, so let me ask you this real quick, because that you teed this one up for me, because I like Gonzaga and UCLA both as my picks. I'm sad that they're both in the same region, so something will give. Who needs more consistent point guard play to do what they need to do, Gonzaga or Kansas?
Well, Kansas. I think Gonzaga's guard play definitely scares me, but they have enough. Scares me in a I don't want to bet on them, not as scares me if I'm going up against them. I don't think Nolan Hickman is leading that team to a championship. That's my thing. At least Harris, shows up, and when he does, it's great. I don't know. I just don't trust Gonzaga's defense. They're, I think, 76th in defensive efficiency. And I actually looked this up the other day. There have been, dating back to 2002, there have been 24 teams in the tournament, top 5 offense, outside the top 75 in defense. None of them made the Final Four. And of those teams, you've got the Ohio State team that lost to Oral Roberts. You've got the Missouri team that lost to Norfolk State in 2012.
Remember that.
There's just something about this. The great offense, bad defense always goes towards the bad defense.
Well, guess what I'm doing? Changing my bracket.
Kerry, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk again soon.
Let me tell you one more thing. Baylor is 2 in offense, 104 on defense. So fade Baylor too.
Wow. Kerry, you're the man.
Yeah, man.
Hey, appreciate it, Kerry.
Yep. Take care, guys.
At Karen's James on Twitter. Coming up, we're going to talk about that baseball game that took place between 2 local teams next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
DB, ask me why I chose not to play college baseball.
Because you would have to play it in 35-degree weather?
That is correct.
I had a feeling.
Yep, that is absolutely correct. I am a wuss, and I chose against that path in my life. Now, there were other reasons, too. Other teams did not choose me. But I...
Devil's in the details. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. I do not want to play, or would not want to play, in 35 to 40-degree weather with the wind blowing and it chilly, especially at Haymarket. It was definitely chilly yesterday. A long game, too, and that comes into it. That game was 3.5 hours, something like
closer
that.
to 340.
Yeah, okay, so 340.
That's
so
like
you're outside. You're not leaving those dugouts
36.
ever. Like, there aren't tunnels to where you can go warm up in the team clubhouse. This isn't the pros. This is you stay in the dugout the whole time.
Nebraska's pitchers threw over 210 pitches.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, that was
most coming from the bullpen.
That was that's fourth inning. All right. Were you watching that and you're like, what is going on? And that was a team in Omaha that didn't even have Bovee.
That was the big thing for me because I tuned in bits and pieces. So I watched the beginning, and then I went to RCIA, and then I peeked at it through RCIA, and then I watched the 7th inning on when I got home, which I couldn't believe it was the 7th inning at 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. So I get home, and then I start watching the 8th inning, and I'm like, well, that's not Mike Bovee over at third base when I saw the cutaway, because I wasn't paying attention too much to the details. I had to go back and watch some. And I texted a buddy of mine, and I go, hey, what's up with Bovee? He said hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really? And then I texted him again. I go, I can't believe it's 10-6. They scored 10 runs without the best hitter potentially in the state. And
for sure.
For sure in the Summit League. So the Mavs,
all Frederick did was have 4 hits.
Do the Mavs
in his absence, right? Because I think he went 4 for 5.
Do the Mavs own Nebraska?
No.
I'll tell you what. In the last 2 years,
I love.
They've won 3 out of 5.
I love both schools, so I'm gonna refrain from picking a side. But I felt like. And I wasn't the first one to think it, so I'm definitely not going to claim the jinx factor. But I can't help but feeling some type of way for asking Brunsey last week when I said, hey, what would you do with Clarkie at this point? I get Clark. I don't know kind of what you.
Is it still too early? Can you throw
I
I
don't think so. I think you have to kind of make some. I think you have to make some hard decisions because it looks like Garza's going to be your 3.
And he looked good yesterday. And five strikeouts over 3.
I think you're going to have to figure out what to do with Clark at this particular juncture. The 2 walks and 17 pitches, and he just couldn't find it. The weird thing about this staff in parts is when they lose it, they all the way lose it. It's just not like here and there. So I don't know. I think that they've got some decisions to make, but I think good on if you're a Mavs fan. I mean, good on them. I think Bell kept you in it, and got you off to a good
and
start.
Bell's never been a deep guy.
Yeah, got you off to a good start, and you know, when he and Garza were going at it, you were thinking this may not get to whatever it was, 336 or 337. I can't remember the official, but when it's closer to 4 hours than it is
to three.
How many pitchers we see? 12, maybe? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, they cycled through them because both guys were out of there within the 3.5 inning mark.
Yeah.
I'll say this too, and Coach Bolt acknowledged it. UNO was just the better team in this game. They got the key hits when they needed to. They made the big pitches. They made the plays that they needed to make. They took advantage of their opposition's mistake. And it's easy to win games when you do that. And they also got most of their run production from their 7, 8, and 9 hitters. Their 7, 8, 9 put together 7 RBIs. That's more than what Nebraska put up on the board. So credit UNO and how they responded in this game. After giving up 2 in the home half of that third inning, they came back with 4. And then when Nebraska gained a 1-run lead after 5 and made it 6-5, immediately after UNO's back on the board, leading that game 7-6.
And you kind of negotiated what you were going to get out of Bell, because even though he gave up the 3 earned runs and the 3 walks. So it's not like, it's sharp. He gets you through 4. And it was hard to believe, like you go back and you look at kind of how that thing was unfolding, that there were 16 walks between the two teams. But would you have guessed 8 apiece? When you look at what this,
I would not have.
I wouldn't have either. And so that one kind of caught me off guard as I go back to think about what took so long. But man, that is I felt like a week ago, Nebraska was in such a good position to win some of these midweek series to kind of pad the record. But I may have kind of misjudged with midweek starters. And Brunt's, he was pretty detailed about not making that assumption. He answered the question when I was asking him about, is this staff in a position to where they can start to establish some consistency in these midweek games? And I mean, he basically was like, yeah, well, you hope so, but we'll see. And that's what it prompted me to ask about what you do with Caleb Clark. But I don't know about the pitching depth, because I think Shanneman took the L yesterday, right?
Did he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Shanny took the L in the win-loss record. But when I was looking at Nebraska's bullpen, I was thinking, I felt like they were more than making progress.
How about that outing too from Rand Sanders, Colonel Sanders, how they like to call him over in Omaha, comes in, bases loaded, nobody out in the 8th inning. And what does he do to hitters that hit over 500 in the lineup and lead the team in RBIs? He strikes them out. They made the big pitches. The bullpen was better for Omaha in this game. Now, if you ask me, hey,
Andrew,
and
Nebraska kicked it around a little bit too, because I think they finished with the 3 errors.
Yes, and that doesn't help either. The defense behind their pitching. But if you ask me, hey, Andrew, this is a 3-game series. Let them play 3 in a row. How does it end up? I'd probably say Nebraska wins 2 of them. Especially without Mike Bovee in the lineup, I'd say Nebraska wins 2 of them.
Yeah, and you kind of like Nebraska Friday, Saturday night starting too.
Right, but you also have to factor in that, hey, Omaha didn't throw their best arm. Like, don't forget that they have Caleb Rydell.
Yeah.
Like, if you put him up there, you just need the offense to back it. I don't think the offense has been totally there for Omaha yet this year. But if this is any inclination about what we are going to see over the next 14 games, where 13 of them are at home at Tal, this is going to be a fun team to watch this year.
And how about just talking to Adrian the other day at Baxter, he said, regardless of sport, whether it's high school or college, whenever Omaha gets the opportunity to host and have things on their campus, they're going to be all in. Can you imagine with the Summit League on the line, what Baxter would be like in terms of baseball? Like, we saw what it was like with hockey on the Saturday night in a must-win. That game was, that hockey, that was wall-to-wall. I just like the fact that they're embracing the opportunity to be a legitimate Division I big program, right? Doing the cost of attendance, raising money. Like their profile, they've got a chance to elevate, and baseball's kind of been a sneaky low-key cog.
Are we going to see Courtney Wallace and Cam Meyer tonight?
Yeah.
That game in Omaha.
Yeah. And it's going to be beautiful weather too. I am
63 degrees.
And if the wind stays down, could be a hitter's night with what we saw happen with the staffs last night. Yeah, you may brace for another.
More times than not,
brace for a 4-hour win
at
again.
that softball diamond. The wind likes to blow out toward left field.
Yeah.
You look at the American flag; it's blowing to the parking lot.
And how good has Wallace been?
Fantastic. Meyer's been just as good.
Yeah.
But I think Wallace takes the bump tonight.
She's just coming off the Player of the Week, right? Did I see that last week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think Wallace, being an Omaha native, going to have, and not that she doesn't have people showing up to Lincoln. It's not that far of a drive, but you bring the pole when you're back in your hometown.
And cool thing is what's today, Wednesday? I think Friday morning we got Jessica Cootie, who can talk softball. She'll be our wrestling correspondent, as she will be at Nationals while we're working on Coach Manning.
A lot
we'll try to get you covered.
A lot in store. No matter how you like your coffee or brewed, we always have it differently here on Coffee and Cream. When we come back, we're playing a game. 2 for you. Get involved. 888-638-4876. 2 for you. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Now one of Damon's favorite games and one of Shane's favorite games.
Is this the game where I have to write stuff down?
Well, maybe not so much Shane.
Yes, Shane. This would be the game.
Yes, it's 2 for you.
All right, let's do it.
Wow.
Why does Shane sound sick in your voice when you're like, is this the game?
Because it's like, so full disclosure, what did he say 20 minutes ago? And we had no idea what he was talking about.
Fair point. He goes, is there a game today?
That's all he said. That's all he said.
And I go,
and first of all, he mumbled it, so I had no idea what he said. Oh, is there a game today? And
maybe I did that because I didn't want you to go, oh, yes, Shane, this is a game. You got to write stuff down.
Is that how it sounded?
And I knew we had 2 for you. I just wanted to.
Why didn't you call it 2 for you? When you said, is there a game today,
then,
I was thinking,
and then he said, for you afterward. After I said, oh, yeah, we have 2 for you today. He goes, oh, yeah, for you.
Yeah, whatever. That's why nobody picks you, Shane.
Oh, that's why people...
Hey, we'll leave that up. We'll leave that up to
picking me, people.
Trent. Trent is on line 1, but before we get to him, let's tell you who 2 for you is sponsored by. That is by Dingman's. They have a give back program for every car repaired at Dingman's. DB is going to have to take a vehicle into Dingman's here soon.
So what is it? So it's like when Dingman's is like, hey, we want to be a part of what you're doing, man. We think you guys are going to be a good show. And it's like, do you think that they knew that I'd actually be a customer?
No, I think they
because right now they're winning.
I think they knew we'd be a car crash together, and so they're like, "Oh, okay."
It's like talk about testimonials.
You know why we're a car crash together though? Because every car accident is you can't take your eyes off of it. When you're driving down the road, you see a car accident, you're like, "Man, I can't take my eyes off of that." That's what Dingman's thought about us.
So
I'm convinced.
I've got Caleb's whatever you call it. What do you
vehicle?
No, like when they have to look at it. Estimate.
Oh,
okay. at 10:45, and I'm hoping it's a quick turnaround. It's always a lot easier when it's not on your dime, but
everything's a lot easier
without having access to the vehicle. Though I still have to get it licensed.
Just like us giving away gift cards to Hail Varsity Club. That's not on our dime.
Didn't Trent eat pretty well last week? If he used
let's ask him. Trent, good morning, man.
Good morning, fellas. How are we?
Good.
We are good. Hey,
are you giving away these gift cards for like holidays or stocking stuffers, or what are we doing here, Trent?
Yeah, I got a little side business going over here.
Selling Hail Varsity Club cards on the black market.
Listen, I got 10 for 40, 10 for 40, 10 for 40. $10 get you $40 for the 40.
Well,
10 for
Trent,
40.
I got to tell you, man, you were very smart about not playing last week because DB and I went 0 for 4 for like the first time in a long time. So now that you're back, we will probably take it home. But I'm going to leave the chance, or I'm going to leave the decision up to you. Would you like to play with Shane, DB, or myself?
I want to play with, let's see, Andrew and DB.
Okay.
I want to run it back. You guys won last time.
Okay. Okay.
I was kind of mad at Drew down last time. Those questions were tough.
Yeah, we were.
My man didn't understand.
I don't know. Chiefs didn't run it back last time, so
yeah, that is true.
Whatever, Garoppolo.
I did not understand clear. Okay, now let's be clear, DB. Let's get him 4 for 4.
Okay.
We want to give him those chance to double down. Hey, Trent, give me a number 1, 2, or 3.
We'll go with 1.
1. All right, DB, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Something you'd see at a hospital.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Something you'd bring to the pool.
Okay.
A city in Florida.
Okay.
And something that rhymes with ding.
Okay.
Feel good?
I don't know.
You didn't feel good out there after that first question. You were like, uh-oh. But we are ready. We are here to win some gift card money for Trent. Let's do it.
Wait, I just changed one.
Shane, would you like to do the countdown for us today? Yes. All right.
Okay, so you're going to ask the question, and I'm going to count it down?
I'm going to give the prompt. You count it down.
Did I go, is it from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
It's just 3. Just 3.
So I go 1, 2, 3?
No, okay, I'll do the countdown. Something you'd see at a hospital. 3, 2, 1.
A
Doctors.
nurse.
Ooh, different.
Timeout.
Do not tell me you wrote doc. Unbelievable. You don't change your answer, DB. You had it.
Do you know what, though? You'd see a nurse before you saw a doctor, even though doctor was my original answer. And I changed it. Did you just? I said, hold on.
Yeah, I know.
And I changed
That's
it.
why I can't believe. Oh, darn it.
It's all right.
It's all right. Hey, 3 more. All right. Something you
said, oh, geez.
Something you'd bring to the pool. 3, 2, 1.
Towel. All right.
Right there.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. A city in Florida. 3, 2, 1.
Miami.
Back on track. Trent, $10 gift card in your pocket. Are we doubling down for 20?
You know he's the house money king.
Yeah. What was the last question?
Something that rhymes with ding.
Oh, easy. Run it back.
All right, DV, you ready?
I'm ready.
Something that rhymes with ding. 3, 2, 1.
Ring.
Bang! 3 out of 4. Trent, $20 gift card for you.
I got 10 for 20. 10 for 20. Give me 10 to get you $20 worth of food.
I love that.
Hey,
now I get some good wings for the basketball games this weekend.
Yes,
yeah.
you do. And we have a
sure.
big March Madness outing tomorrow. You should show up.
Hey, so Trent, are you a breading guy or no breading?
I'll do some breading.
You gotta try it's like a $1 upcharge, but you're always eating for free anyway. So you need the wings with the breading. It's unbelievable.
It's insane.
Seriously.
And get them naked.
All right.
He gets and he does his own. It's his own breading. It's seasoned. It's pretty fantastic.
All right, I'll have to give it a shot.
All right, buddy.
Hey.
Ready for that Illinois game tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, here he is. There he goes. There he goes.
Danger. Woo, woo. Trent, appreciate you, buddy.
2 very inconsistent teams. Illinois.
You guys have a good day.
Arkansas. You
Thanks,
too,
buddy.
man. Thanks for the call. Got about 4.5 minutes.
Inconsistent who? What?
Inconsistent basketball.
Illinois and
Arkansas.
Yeah, very
Arkansas.
remember when people thought really, really highly of Arkansas?
And Illinois.
Yeah, so people still think, like, I'm getting this a ton this week. Oh, man, you're looking for danger. I'm like, do you know who their coach is?
He's dangerous.
It's like
he could be a flight risk.
They do have a lot of pieces, though.
And Terrence Shannon Jr.
Bucket,
oh,
getter.
man.
Bucket getter.
Yeah, and you need those at this stage.
How about Kerry James just all in on Houston regardless of Sasser?
Yeah, pretty insane. I don't know if he's factoring in the fact that Houston is hosting the Final Four. But
you know what? I do. He's going to force me, much like the doctor-nurse thing. I better look at the Gonzaga and Baylor runs in my respective brackets. Those statistics are hard to. I'm afraid of Gonzaga's backcourt.
As you should be.
It's
As you should be.
But
in a lot
people
of
like
backcourts.
UConn, and I think they're inconsistent.
And they still get more love than Gonzaga for sure.
Dude, I saw 3 of the 5 that were on the panel on the 4-letter network had UConn. 4 of the 5 had a version of UConn or Texas in the Final Four.
Final Four. Yeah, I don't think Texas gets there. I really think they're going to run into trouble. First matchup, second matchup, third matchup before they get to the Elite Eight.
You're all in on toothpaste.
I am all in on toothpaste. I'm all in on Penn State, and I'm really liking Iowa State's defense. And they
can't score.
Doesn't matter. They can stop scoring.
Is that the west? Is that the west side there?
Pardon?
Is that the west side bracket?
Yeah, that's west.
Yeah, the west is not good. That looks tough.
Yeah, so even if you do first blush, pin it in, it was hard. I'm like, you're not supposed to think, just type.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, click. No, I didn't like that. Click. No, I didn't like that. It's like,
who I put in the Final Four in this bracket.
You've got Bama, UConn. Wait, Colgate.
They're making it. And here's why.
So what? How many points would that get you? That's 6 games. So that'd be 5 wins at 150 per
140 points. Because no, is it 100? Did I say 160?
I think 150 is a 16 and
Okay.
140 is 15.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, oh boy, you're gonna put me on the spot. 140 times 5 is 700.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, would that suffice? Yeah, 700 points. You're winning.
Well, no doubt. But see, the only way I got there was I put Kent State in the Elite Eight.
Dude, have I talked to you in Kent State?
You have.
What about Furman? Have you backed off of Furman?
I have Virginia winning. I like Furman to cover.
So what's it down? What is it now?
I think it's still at 7.5.
Well, I can't, if it's 7, it's stealing. I thought it got to like 6.
Now it's at 5.5.
Okay. So maybe now the value's gone, but I'm telling you, man, Furman could win the game outright.
Oh, it never even got to 7.5. Why did I think it got to 7.5?
Because I think originally I said 7 when it opened.
Okay, maybe that's why.
Yeah.
But aside from that, yeah, there are a lot of games that I am just unsure on, which is why you put the under. You said 10 for upsets. Kerry said the under. I'm still thinking it's the over because of how strong of competition we are seeing out of those higher seeds.
I know. We always say, oh, it's going to be anarchy, and then we get kind of chalky down the stretch. What if it's just anarchy the whole way through?
What if it's just chalk? You know what I mean? Like we are talking about anarchy.
That would be awesome.
And it's just the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s that keep moving on.
I mean, best wishes picking 8 through 20 in the top 20.
Yes.
Right? It's just, where do they go?
Yep.
I heard a lot of bad mouthing of Purdue yesterday on the Talking Head shows.
And
a lot of bad mouthing of Purdue.
I know
so
they had a
make
great
run.
start to the year, but I was going to ask Kerry that question if we had more time. Like, man, they aren't getting any love, and it seems like the teams that don't get love
trusts their backcourt
ends up being the team that actually plays well.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow.